Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon Mercury Hour, Mars Night. Black Moon Lilith ingress to 3 degrees Sagittarius, and this is a Mercury degree, and this degree has to do with communication. Mercury is in Capricorn, conjoining Mars. Mars at 24 degrees Capricorn. A little bit of an energy reading, what I'm getting is that because of the lack of models of women, biblical women, okay, that were not in a violent relationship or in a subjugation relationship. Many people grew up missing an archetype or an awareness of how a spiritually sovereign woman speaks, acts, what she means versus what they interpret. And I'm getting that it has created, okay, even if I said, let's say, difficult things like extortion calls aside, it gets to the very basics. The foundation for communication is missing. There cannot be communication where a spiritually sovereign woman is something that invokes primordial paranoia because of the lack of being accustomed to sovereign spirituality. Okay? Just like, if all the people that are supposed to be politicians in a democratic regime are expected to have a degree which they earn in a hierarchical, clergy like, structural ivory tower that talks about meritocracy but not representation, and keeps society ignorant of the information needed to make decisions, which is of course connected to extortion calls. But in such a society, we cannot expect democracy to democracy. Okay, so okay, people are growing up into a culture that is very hierarchical, and I'm not even talking about fraternities. How do they don't get to practice democracy? They're expected to have a degree, but they don't get to practice democracy. Same as with this issue, and this issue has to do with if people grow in religious and spiritual paradigms where a woman who is in a not violent subjugation, sadness to do with birth, or grief, basically. That's what was. um, Relations with a man, she's a demon that kidnaps children and births inverts and okay, that is not a foundation and a very basic fundamental level of communication between men and women. Those that do manage, they somehow do a detour, or spirituality is somehow, they somehow tap into authentic spirituality without thinking too much about, let's say, the Bible. And what it creates is complete lack, total missing frames of reference that even begin to approximate a healthy relation between a man and a woman. Those that manage to have healthy relations do it in spite of every fundamental thing in society, from economy to spirituality to everything. They could have, I don't know, parents that lived well together, and those parents probably did it against any odds. So what I'm seeing in energy is that fundamental lack of even ability to understand. Okay, could have cost certain people both relationships and even good friendships. I talked a lot about the economy and the why and how things got to that. But here, Lilith in the third degree reminds us the implications are that, and I'm not even saying we lost, but we definitely don't have sovereign spirituality that's sustained for equal loving relationships. Lilith reminds us that we have fooled ourselves to believe that we can spiritually bypass that and not have extreme repercussions. Jupiter retrograde in Pisces gives us a dose of truth about relation. And here with the moon in Capricorn, it can be an old relation or a past relation, or even the relation with orthodoxy and religion. But what I'm seeing here is that this fundamental lack of a happy, thriving, joyous, safe, free, sensual, erotic, non erotic woman didn't exist. And if we cannot even conceptualize it, and consequently, the cost of that, on what would it be left for the spiritually sovereign man? There would be no frame of reference as well. This is why, on a mundane level, people are dealing with warlocks. And then they blame the women that still date these warlocks for either being naive and really not knowing what is a warlock, okay, or in them being witches. But hey, if how men transmute sexual energy, and again, not all men, I know that there are, the fact that Lilith is here is a note that people are encountering these themes. So it's not going to stay like that. But the fact that it rises show us that it's been like that. A man that would learn to sexually transmute his energy would consequently be taught and indoctrinated to use that to gain something that's not in alignment with happy relationships or friendships with his fellow men and with women, gay or straight. Lilith reminds us that the cost of this loss, whether it began in spirit or in trafficking, okay, um, but the focus here is on the spiritual cost, the spiritual loss of something so fundamental to conceptualize happy relation. Of course, it affects the mundane life. Okay, I was Friday here is a short day, and I was going out to have some coffee, and then I was at one of these drugstores, and there were men clothes, women clothes, and then I thought it was women clothes and it was children's clothes, and I'm beginning to think, wait a second, children, they grow up so quickly, so they need so many sets of clothes. And it was like, to buy an apartment is risky business, but that's an apartment. Okay, that's not that to be homeless and subjected to, whatnot is a good thought. Um, but the cost of having children, that's not something that someone can bail out of. They need warm clothes, they need food. And the fact that that's so fundamentally looking like an exponent of climbing a mountain, but climbing the Himalaya. Okay. It is- okay. That people look just, if people don't realistically look at that, then later they're going to be blamed for not looking at that. If they do look at that and see, wait a second, I saw what happens with mortgages. And then everybody's worried or concerned why both men and women that have a frame, a mindset of their own, say that's that's not something I can go speculative about. Now, all of these things are, of course, connected to the culture that was created at the lack of a spiritual reference to happy love that is actually thriving, to an equal relationship. And when I say equal, I don't mean, oh, the man is going to have another, you know, technologically be able to have children as a cisgender man, and the woman will, I don't know, fight in the army is no longer example, as women are combatants, but um, and they work at construct, like all those things were crossed. But this is basically a notion of not a subjugation relation in spirit. Now, very likely happy couples are not spiritual couples, but couples that definitely don't take the subjugation part too seriously. Okay, these would be people that would be able to laugh at the world and get away with that. And in the very lack of the reference is what's allowing so many inversions. It's basically an eternally traumatic state spiritually to be at without even having a frame of reference to something different. Now, in such a society, of course, people will either have consecutive attempts to have a relationship that works, or will get into bubbles where they don't even get to communicate with one another in a way that like something would always try to release from that, but there's no substance. Okay. And Lilith is looking at this in Sagittarius, not with the vehemence and rigor purging of Scorpio, but with an enlightened, so to speak, perspective, is not coming to judge anyone, and not even seeking to understand, but actually having a eureka. A hey, okay. So these people are thinking that because of that. Now, Lilith is about sexual sovereignty, and Sagittarius is not just spirituality, benevolence, the guru, it's sexual transmutation. What happens after the purging of Scorpio? We cleared up the Kundalini energy. What does it want to do? Rise, tell the truth, and express and grow and expand. And this is also why it's such a spiritual sign that at the end, where the moon is now, is also containing another constellation that is associated with Orpheus, which is kind of like the yin sign, the feminine fire snake or something. Now, you say that in a room full of Catholics, and they and like, you don't. You don't. But this is everything wrong with society. And I'm not blaming Catholicism. Okay? Again, whether the origin is in spirit or in extortion cults, okay, in spirit or in mafia, okay, the end result is that something of that spirit got extinct. So much so that we are even tempted to think that it wasn't there to begin with. And I'm not here to say whether it was or wasn't, um, but that's definitely missing. And the reconnection with innocence that is so inherently necessary to even to anything good, whether it's friendship, whether it's relationship, whether it's sex, is met through abnormalities, irregular relations, unusual patterns of kundalini behavior. And of course, as we look at, okay, what would it take, even without spirituality, what would it take to have a happy, let's say, cisgender man, cisgender woman? What does it take for these two to be happy? Before we even go transgender, non-conforming, economy, health system, housing, food, a working sector that is not slavery based, a political system of whichever kind that accommodates for that. Good ability to communicate and even understand styles of communication that are either compatible or um, how to how to create understandings. Okay, we don't even need spirituality and religion to understand that all of that needs to happen. Now, what happens when there is this, okay, whether it's at the tail or at the head, something that prevents on an energy level for these things to fully manifest without it being considered an abomination. Now, this is so much so that many people are trying to imagine. It's kind of like being colorblind trying to imagine the colors of the rainbow. When everything about the frequency of the colors is distorted because of that lack of clarity on a spiritual level and a philosophical level. What are the beliefs regarding relations that people, men and women, and gender nonconforming and whatnot, have about a spiritually, sexually sovereign woman? And in that missing, not unlike mold, okay? No, seriously, this is what mold grows on, and other types of anomalies in cell developments. Grows a booming industry that capitalizes on the addictions that are formed in an environment where people have no frame of reference for the safe and free, sovereign, and happy connection in spirit and in matter, in eroticism and romance, and in heartfelt friendship. So much so that it looks like a utopia that never has been. Now, those booming industries are the extortion cults. And that addiction is the missing budget to housing, the missing budget to clothing and growing a child. There are ages when children grow where they were like a month ago, they were that shoe size, and now they're that shoe size, even though they bought a bigger shoe size so that it would gradually fit. How do we expect for that exponential growth to be funded in an economy that relies on new parents? Don't watch this right now, on our children being trafficked? Okay. Where funding for a child is considered the ransom of an extortion cult. Because something in the creation of abundance has been fumbled with. And that's to do with that type of missing sovereignty that Lilith here represents. Okay, as an astrologer, when we learn to do talismans, then if I want to do, let's say, Jupiter um, in Cancer, okay, not now when it turns direct. Yeah, let's say I want to do Jupiter in Cancer, it turns direct, the moon will be in the middle decan of Sagittarius, and then I'm going to call to everything that signifies the moon and to everything that signifies Jupiter in an hour of Jupiter, day of the moon, or day of Jupiter, or night of Jupiter, an hour of the moon, and the corresponding herbs and the corresponding crystals and whatever I can gather that fits those. Okay, and then I'm going to use whether it's incantation or a song or intention or all of the above, and hopefully a little bit of flame or water is the element of the moon. And then I created basically a little ritual uh, um, that has a substance that is a sort of a portal to communicate with the desired manifestations. So it can be growth, it can be safe joy. Now, the way people say the name of Lilith is upon the bed of the infant, hanging a note that says Liliti, Lilitu, Lilita, and so on and so forth, thinking that they cast Lilith away, while they actually invoke Lilith. Now, Lilith just reminds us that she's one of the representation of those goddesses that were casted out once the spiritual paradigm shifted into subjugation or exile of the feminine. Now, in those contexts, they invoke Lilith upon the bed of the infant. Okay, that's like calling someone, and then they answer and they hang up the phone. And I get this energy with Orpheus a lot. There's so many. I think since I first heard about the term Orpheus, which was around the ingress of Pluto to Capricorn, I heard it, which basically Pluto going to Orpheus. and then and then I said there's some consciousness here that tries to and by the way, towards the end of the journey of Pluto in Capricorn, it came back again around the COVID, and it's like an energy that tries to permeate the consciousness of humanity, and people keep hanging up the phone. Oh, it's the female snake. No, but snake is the devil. Snake is a um, kundalini energy, life energy. Yeah, that's the inverts. That's the and then there are cultures where we had more preservation of the female goddesses, like certain Indian cultures where there are rituals to evoke the kundalini rising that can sometimes be spontaneous, but even within these cultures, the how should I say that? There is something hierarchical that perhaps overtakes, basically meaning they're not exempt from the troubles of the rest of the world spirituality, in terms of spirituality. Um, but at least there is this awareness that there is this kundalini energy. Now, Lilith sextiles Pluto almost agrees with Pluto that that we should be doing something about that mold. Pluto loves to transform, to compose, to regenerate, to rejuvenate. it goes all the way to the point where the fundamental cues of communication went completely, how should I say that? Okay, went completely into a zone where the liminal space between what, let's say, a woman really is to how she's being perceived. Okay, for example, in Spain, in the summer, women go in spaghetti shorts or in shorts without bra. Okay, unless there's an actual physical reason to wear a bra. Okay, like after pregnancy or having breasts that really need support, there isn't necessarily a reason to wear a bra. So it's not like that has any cue other than it's summer outside. Now we're milliseconds before colonialism o'clock. Okay? Think about Europeans coming from cold countries, reaching Africa and rural Africa, where in some places after the overtake of Christianity, yes, it's not like that, but certain more tribal lives, women would wear something like a skirt, and so would the men. And that, like, women have breasts. The Europeans were really, they lost it. Now, Africa is so big. And yet we know that many traditions do have the female goddesses. Whether it's Oya or Ushun or, okay, I know those that got into the Western discourse more. And it doesn't mean that they don't have problems, but it definitely means that a woman wearing, let's say, a skirt and a tribal necklace, celebrating herself being a mother, was not being seen in the same way by the pathologically Christian okay society that came to colonize Africa, or Muslim. Okay, and the fundamental lack of understanding the social cues results in those that grew up in this moldy mist where there wasn't. The closest would have been, I don't know, Sophia, Mary Magdalene. Oh, she was a whore. Um, oh, Virgin Mary. Isn't that the mother of Jesus? Yeah, never mind. A spiritual birthday. What about this thing in Genesis where we have God created man and woman equal in his image, and then suddenly there is this half a rib, and man and half a rib gave birth, and then no, they fell from because of the snake. Why did they punish the snake? Isn't that Kundalini energy? Isn't that the thing that needs to be freely flowing? Otherwise, it's causing disease. That's chi, no? Life energy, Kundalini. That's demonic. Uh, so how do they live? A lot of wars because they don't. First two children were sons. They didn't have a sister. We don't know how they multiplied onwards. One killed the other. Shouldn't have punished the snake. But God says not to eat from the apples. What would happen? They would learn how to produce textile. And we can't really talk about that because that's abomination. Now, in that moldy mist, trying to interpret the social cues is going completely nuggets. And it's not about, oh, men are like, or no, it's just think about how much time cisgender women, not even talking about, okay, the gender non-conforming and so on and so forth. Just think about it, or even just think about how, for some people, being trans woman is shaving the legs. Okay, whereas for other cisgender women, not shaving the armpits is feminism. How much time does the cisgender woman spends in, well, nobody has the right to rape me no matter what I wear, and how much of her clothing choices represent that statement more so than, oh, I'm really feeling juicy today. Okay, so this is not that men get it wrong or women get it wrong, is that the fundamental frame of reference is completely distorted. In a world where, I don't know, um, Lilith, let's say, both Lilith and Adam would have choices of people to mingle with, let's say, okay? In an equal way. It could be that the woman, I don't know, exposing a shoulder would denote at her being in erotic mode. It could be. But people got so dissociated that today a woman with the shirt that, let's say, exposes one shoulder could simply be a styling choice. Where she's so dissociated that she wouldn't even what do people look at? What's to look at? Okay, the dissociation from eroticism because eroticism was lacking something fundamental, brings basically very weird juxtapositions between behaviors, performances, in intention and perception. If Uranus in Taurus represents the embodied, Lilith in Sagittarius reminds us of the spiritually sacred, eroticism, because it's Lilith. And then we have all genders caught up in, no, I'm not, I don't know, women wearing, or why are you wearing short pants? Because it's warm. What? It is summer. Oh, because it looks a woman wearing like this. Maybe she wants. No. Now let's admit it. If we actually had a frame of reference that honors the erotic, regardless of gender, the yes, no, and maybe, okay, maybe those social cues would have a frame of reference. Maybe they would mean that. But we're so dissociated that we have completely forgot how to artistically represent our eroticism in a way that is in alignment with our inner state. And let alone the fact that, let's say, I don't know, uh, a lady decided to walk with a daring dress. Let's say she goes to an event or to an evening or whatnot. Fantastic. She's not going to be in the same mood for the entire evening. It's, it's dynamic. If we don't know to hold place for that, if we don't, we lost the, how should I say that? Naturally, in Arctic countries, they have more words for snow. We don't have even the language to accentuate the frequencies. Well, one would be compatible with this. Actually, from Vedic astrology, we have Moon Nakshatra, and I have a funny story with Moon Nakshatra compatibility. My teacher, Lada Duncheva, discovered this teaching called the Moon Nakshatras and Karmic Ropes. So, Karmic Ropes is basically where the nakshatras of the moon are associated with body parts that are not compatible. Many times people will have those relationships, but they're not meant to be a forever relationship. And I have, let's say, naval moon nakshatra and naval moon nakshatras are not compatible together in ideas, housing, children, and so on. But the first time I checked the moon nakshatra compatibility was not with a romantic partner. And then I see but the type of the yoni, which is basically the genitals, and compatibility um, between that, okay? Now, naturally, as an astrologer, I do chart of celebrities, so there's another added layer with the elite of satire when it comes to that. um, it just shows how even when we do astrology, certain things were almost missing. Okay? Now, people not having the attunement would get a false sense of rejection where whereas nothing is like okay, it's kind of like, one person is into sushi, one person is into pasta. Person is into sushi has gluten allergy. Person is into pasta doesn't like or gets allergy to I don't know, the seaweeds. We don't even have an expression for that. And the fact that everything is so abnormal means we are way more likely to be surrounded with karmic rope moon nakshatras, which literally means creative energies clash. Now, in an environment where there is a spiritual blockade to be in a situation that doesn't clash, we don't have any frame of reference. And so people are continuously getting into karmic relations, twists and turns with themselves, even regarding, you think about person, people can manifest a Lamborghini before they can manifest safe, secure attachment. Nothing against Lamborghinis, but safe, secure attachment is not something that I can just, you know, if it's not a Lamborghini, it takes me from point A to point B, is probably good. But if it's not secure attachment, it it affects the ability to have a happy, satisfying, rich life. And I don't mean monetarily. By the way, I don't mean monetarily either, because it creates addictions. What addictions create? Leaking budgets. Now, if you can't do astrology and you can't combine from another culture and you need a certification at the folks that rape children to get a certification, very difficult to untangle all that messy moldiness. If anything, that